Tennessee's at-home learning series for literacy. Today's lesson is for all our 7th graders out there, though anyone is welcome to tune in. This lesson is the 3rd in this week's series. My name is Mrs. Alley, and I'm a 7th grade teacher for Tennessee schools. I'm so excited to be your teacher for this lesson. Welcome to my virtual classroom. If you didn't see our previous lessons, you can find them at www.tn.gov/education. You can still tune in to today's lesson if you haven't seen any of our others. But it might be more fun if you first go back and watch our other lessons, since today we'll be talking about things we've learned previously. Today we will be learning about historical context from Emily Dickinson's poem we have been studying. Specifically, we will learn about how the train came about and how it impacted society. Learning about this history will help us understand Emily Dickinson's train poem on a whole nother level. Before we get started, to participate fully in today's lesson, you're going to need a few things: paper, pencil, a surface to write on, and the student packet for ELA Grade 7, Lesson 13, which you can find at www.tn.gov/education. Let's get started. Today, we will use an informational text to build knowledge about how the railroad affected American life in the 1800s. Last time, we reread this poem by Emily Dickinson. We focused on her use of figurative language throughout the poem to convey an image of a train. You wrote a response to this prompt. Why does the author compare the train to a horse rather than just describing it more literally? Find your paragraph and reread it to yourself. Here is an exemplary response. Throughout the poem, the author compares the railway train to a horse. At first, it seems like the train is being compared to just any animal when the narrator says she likes to see the object lap the miles and lick the valleys up, almost like a cat would do. The phrase, step around a pile of mountains, creates the image of a large animal, maybe a horse or a mountain goat traveling over difficult terrain. The line, chase itself downhill, is when the image of the horse as the animal the author is using becomes clearer. It isn't until the last stanza that it is obvious the train is being compared to the horse. The poem says the horse neighs and stops at its own stable door. The horse that Dickinson uses in the poem seems curious as it peers into shanties and energetic as it chases itself downhill, which reminds the reader that the train is a new and young technology for the country. The energy, speed, and impressive actions of the train in the poem make it seem more powerful than an actual horse, which is what most people used for transportation before the train. Notice that the response begins with a topic sentence. Did you begin your response with a topic sentence? Throughout the poem, the author compares the railway train to a horse. Then it goes on to say, at first it seems like the train is being compared to just any animal when the narrator says she likes to see the object, lap the miles, and lick the valleys up, and almost like a cat would do. The response logically continues with ideas from the first stanza. Did you also include quotes and explain them? Then it states, the phrase, step around a pile of mountains creates the image of a large animal, maybe a horse or a mountain goat traveling over difficult terrain. The line, chase itself downhill, is when the image of the horse as the animal the author is using becomes clearer. The response explains how the image of a horse becomes clearer with details from the second stanza. Did you include this development? It goes on to say, it isn't until the last stanza that it is obvious the train is being compared to the horse. The poem says the horse neighs and stops and at its own stable door. The response explains how the last stanza makes it obvious to the reader that the subject is a horse. In the next part of the response, the student describes the horse using quotes from the poem. Listen. The horse that Dickinson uses in the poem seems curious at it as it peers into shanties, and energetic as it chases itself downhill, which reminds the reader that the train is a new and young technology for the country. Notice the response connects the image to a horse to the train and how they are similar. The horse is full of energy like a young horse, and the train is a new technology, so it's young too. Did you connect the horse imagery to a train? Maybe you even said that the sound of the poem kind of sounded like a horse running. Great job. Listen to the close of the response. The energy, speed, and impressive actions of the train in the poem make it seem more powerful than an actual horse, which is what most people used for transportation before the train. This helps people understand the new technology of the train and how it is more powerful than what they are used to using. Notice that the response now includes details that compare the train to the horse, describing how the train seems more powerful than the horse. Did you include other details comparing the horse and train? Maybe you said that it is obvious a train is much faster than a horse. What makes this paragraph exemplary? First, the student uses complete sentences to respond to the question. Secondly, he includes quotes from the poem, like the valley's up and chases itself downhill, to support his ideas about the horse as a metaphor or a comparison for the train. Additionally, he uses multiple examples from all parts of the poem, not just one stanza. He explains how those quotes show the reader how Dickinson develops this metaphor of a horse throughout the poem. To summarize, exemplary responses use complete sentences, use quotes to support ideas, explain the quotes, and include multiple examples. If you haven't already done so in a previous lesson, you can jot these guidelines down quickly so you can use them in future writing assignments. Today, our goal is to understand how the train affected life in the United States in the 1800s when Emily Dickinson wrote this poem, by reading a short informational article. To do this, we will summarize key ideas as we read and answer some questions. We will begin with me showing you what that looks like, and then there will be time for you to practice on your own with my support. Finally, I will assign you independent work that you can complete after the video ends. The effect of railroads on American life. We are now going to read an informational text titled The Effect of Railroads on American Life. In the mid-1800s, the only thing stopping Americans from settling the West was the fact that only a long, perilous wagon journey could transport you there. Then, in the midst of the Industrial Revolution, the first practical railroad was built. Over time, railroads changed the face of America. They first were used to transport freight or cargo, but eventually revolutionized or greatly changed travel and created jobs in the railroad industry. Many possibilities were seen in the railroads, and many lives were changed because of them. So based on this introduction, the invention of the railroads and trains was a very significant event in American history. I can summarize this paragraph by saying the railroad revolutionized freight transport and travel. Remember what revolutionize means? Yes, it means greatly changed. Good job listening closely. As I continue reading, look for details in the text that explain how the railroad was revolutionary. Around the mid-19th century, the Industrial Revolution started. This was a period of industrial growth. Gradually, machines took the place of hand tools. Now it explains what the Industrial Revolution was. It was the time period when people started inventing machines that could do the work of their hand tools. I'm thinking these machines probably made work faster. Let's keep reading. Steam engines and flowing water in water mills began to take the place of what used to be power provided by humans and horses. The factory system was also invented, as well as interchangeable parts, two inventions that changed the way products were manufactured or put together. Steam engines and flowing water in water mills began to take the place of what used to be power provided by humans and horses. The factory system was also invented, as well as interchangeable parts, two inventions that changed the way products were manufactured or put together. Let's see. I know what a factory is, but let me think more about interchangeable. It is describing parts of a machine, so I know it's an adjective. I see the prefix inter, which means between, and the suffix able, which means able. Oh, and the base word is change. So interchangeable means able to be changed between. Between what? Well, it's talking about machines, so it must mean that the same parts could be used in different kinds of machines. I wonder if this means that different factories made different parts and the products were assembled at another location. Horse-drawn wagons had delivered coal for steam-powered factory machines. With the increase of factory-made goods, a new transport system was needed to carry freight. Before I summarize this paragraph, I want you to look a little more closely at these images. I can tell from image 1, 2, and 3 that these factories were fairly large and busy places. Look at all those people working to manufacture products. Can you see in image 2 all of those machines the workers are using? The women in the image 3 are using machines too, but theirs are a little smaller, but seem to be connected. Images 4 and 5 show the water wheel and steam engine that were mentioned in the paragraph. Image 6 shows both horses and a machine. The horses appear to be pulling goods, and the machine on the right is spraying the mound in the background with water. These pictures give me some idea that I think will help me summarize when I go back to the text. Now here's the whole paragraph. Take a minute to read it to yourself while I read it again. Around the mid-19th century, the Industrial Revolution started. This was a period of industrial growth. Gradually, machines took the place of hand tools. Steam engines and flowing water in water mills began to take the place of what used to be power provided by humans and horses. The factory system was also invented, as well as interchangeable parts, two inventions that changed the way products were manufactured. Horse-drawn wagons had delivered coal for steam-powered factory machines. With the increase of factory-made goods, a new transport system was needed to freight. When I summarize, I want to capture the key ideas, not everything in the paragraph. It should be short, a sentence or two. When I reread the paragraph, I will underline phrases that capture some important ideas. I'm going to keep the phrases as short as possible, but still long enough to help me remember the key ideas. I do not want to underline full sentences because that would just be copying instead of thinking about what's really important. I underlined these phrases. Industrial Revolution started, machines, steam engines, take the place of humans and horses, factory system, change the way products were manufactured, and increase of factory-made goods. New transport system needed to carry freight. These phrases I underlined do capture the key ideas, but I'll have to be sure to keep my summary brief. I definitely want to include Industrial Revolution, machines, factories, change, and transport system. This paragraph explains that during the Industrial Revolution, machines and factories really changed how products were manufactured, so there were more factory-made goods. This meant that they needed a new transport system to carry all of the freight because it would be too much for the horses used to carry the goods. Did you see how I first read the paragraph and identified the key phrases that captured the central idea? Then I looked at the phrases again to narrow down the words to include in a 1 to 2 sentence summary. Okay, let's answer some questions. Why was there a need for a new transport system during the Industrial Revolution? That's incredible, students. I can answer this question easily now that I've already summarized the paragraph. There was a need for a new transport system during the Industrial Revolution because machines and factories made it possible for many more goods to be manufactured. far more than horses handle. Now it's your turn to help with summarizing the next few paragraphs as you also respond to a few questions. There were many apparent advantages of railroads that improved American life and the economy and industry. Before railroads, goods shipped from England would be sent up rivers on barges. What's a barge? Yes, it's a type of boat, and we know this because the sentence says the goods were on rivers. You can see some old barges from the 1800s in the picture here. Those barges would travel about 5 miles per hour, while railroads could easily travel at approximately 35 miles per hour. Let's do some quick math. How much faster was the railroad than the barge? Correct. The railroad could travel 7 times faster than the barge. How do we know that? Well, 35 divided by 5 is 7. No wonder Emily Dickinson described the train as fast in the poem we read. This would save a lot of time and money and could ship more perishable items longer distances. Well, that certainly makes sense since the train was much faster. I am sure we can figure out the meaning of the word perishable. Do you see any prefixes, suffixes, roots, or words in it? Yes, there is a suffix, able. What does that mean? It means able to. You saw the word perish, which means to be destroyed. Let's put those two parts together. What does perishable mean? Yes, perishable means that something is likely to decay or to rot. What types of goods might be perishable if they take too long to be delivered? Exactly. Things like fruit, vegetables, meats, and cheeses. Also, trains could be built anywhere. They were not restricted to only waterways. These advantages made railroads popular among traders and merchants. I wonder if this is where Emily Dickinson got the idea to say the train stepped around mountains, since it says here the trains were built in many different kinds of places. There were many apparent advantages of railroads that improved American life and the economy and industry. Before railroads, goods shipped from England would be sent up rivers on barges. Those barges would travel about 5 miles per hour, while railroads could easily travel at approximately 35 miles per hour. This would save a lot of time and money and could ship more perishable items longer distances. Also, trains could be built anywhere. They were not restricted to only waterways. These advantages made railroads popular among traders and merchants. Now it's your turn to summarize the paragraph. Which words and phrases are important? Write some ideas on your paper. Don't worry, if you miss anything, you can write down the phrases you hadn't already included. Yes, we can include advantages of railroads. What else? That's a good idea to write save a lot of time and money. What else? We can also add ship more perishable items longer distances. Other ideas? I agree. We should also include could be built anywhere. Anything else? I believe you got a good list of phrases there on your paper. Remember to write any phrases you are missing. Here are the phrases you thought were important in the paragraph. Look at your paper to be sure that you have these phrases. Circle the ideas you definitely want to include in your summary sentence. Advantages of railroads, save a lot of time and money, ship more perishable items longer distance, and could be built anywhere. Now take a minute to write a one-sentence summary of the paragraph that incorporate the words, ideas that you circled. Great job! Your sentence looks something like this. Trains saved time and money, shipped more perishable goods further, and could be built in many places. What was was one major difference between shipping freight by barge and shipping freight by railroad? Did your summary sentence help you? It probably did. Maybe you wrote something like this. One major difference between shipping freight by barge and shipping by railroad was the time it took. Freight would travel 7 times faster on a train than on a barge. Great job! Railroads were also popular among citizens. The earliest passenger train was the 136-mile-long South Carolina Railroad. Soon there was a rise in business travel because of the convenience of trains as well as travel for pleasure. Before the construction of railroads, traveling away from your home was uncommon. It doesn't exactly say this, but I wonder if traveling by train was also more comfortable than the wagons they used to take. Second homes as well as summer and winter resorts were created on the Atlantic coast and also further west to encourage people to travel west. People had second homes and people went to resorts? This certainly makes me think that people traveling on the train must have been wealthy. From the late 1800s to mid-1900s, trains were the preferred form of transportation for long-distance travel. Travelers could have their own bedroom compartment and could roam the halls of the cars. The dining car's food was similar to that of a fine restaurant. Students, look at these images. The passengers were wearing elegant clothes in the picture on the right, and you can see the bed they get to sleep in. The picture on the bottom shows the dining car. The passengers here are dressed like they are going to an expensive restaurant, not just eating on a train. These details in the text about the bedroom compartment and fine restaurant reinforce my idea that only people who had a lot of money could really afford to take the train. Now, looking at the whole paragraph, what are the key ideas you want to write down on your paper to help you summarize? Write down one phrase. Good thinking. Popular among citizens is a short phrase that is important. What do you want to add? That's a short phrase that is a key idea too, a rise in business travel. If you didn't include something, you can still add it to your list. What else is important? Yes, travel for pleasure is a key idea too. What other significant detail could we add? I think that works. Let's add transportation for long distance travel. What else? You may be correct that those are all the key ideas. Here are the phrases you identified. On your paper, circle the most important ones that you want to include in a summary sentence. Popular among citizens, rise in business travel, travel for pleasure, and transportation for long travel. Now take a few moments to write your summary sentence. Great work, students. Your summary sentence likely looks like this. The train was also popular among citizens for business, leisure, and long-distance travel. What was it like to be a passenger on a passenger train in the late 1800s to the mid-1900s? Be sure to use examples from the text to support your answer. Here's the paragraph again so that you can cite evidence from the text. Go ahead and take 30 seconds to compose your answer. What did you write? Is your response similar to this one? Train passengers experience comfort and convenience. For example, they could have their own bedroom compartment and eat meals that were just as good as what is served at a fine restaurant. Notice how the response has a clear answer. Train passengers experience comfort and convenience, and incorporates the text evidence in quotation marks as part of the sentence, not just by itself. Soon, railroads became an important part of American life and the American economy and industry. Railroads were essential to the development of Western agriculture and industry. Trains transported perishable produce to markets. They brought in new raw material from far away and could ship goods throughout the country. Manufacturers could now be located anywhere, as railroads were now branched all around the country in many remote or isolated places. I'm thinking here that the railroad made it possible for even smaller remote places to be part of the growing economy because it connected them to more populated. Trains were also being placed inside cities. Subways were developed above ground as well as underground. Railroads also created wealth for those who promoted and funded them. As railroads grew, investors were still hesitant about their profitability. Investors are people who put their own money into a project or company they believe will make them more money. Profitability means the ability to make a profit or more money than you initially put in. As soon as railroads proved to be profitable, investors were eager to invest capital or. Here's the last paragraph. Take a minute to write down key phrases that you want to use in your summary sentence. From the time of its invention, the railroad brought success to the United States. Trains transported freight around the country. No form of transportation had ever been able to send perishable goods so far away. Americans soon began to travel away from home for business and for pleasure, something that was rare before railroads. Thousands of jobs were created in the railroad and train building industries. A surge of immigrants came from Asia and Europe, creating a demand for even more jobs, in search of better lives or a job opportunity on the railroad. So many possibilities were seen in the railroad. Railroads have changed the entire face of America and have had a great effect on the country's history. I might choose to write down a phrase like, no form of transportation had ever been able to send perishable goods so far away. For independent practice today, please use your notes from today's lesson to write a summary paragraph about the entire text we read. You can use any of the phrases or the summary sentences you have already written to help you. Since you are summarizing the entire text, you will need several sentences to capture the central ideas. I enjoyed working on reading and summarizing this article about the effects of the railroad on America with you today. Thank you for inviting me into your home. I look forward to seeing you on our next lesson in Tennessee's At Home Learning series. Bye.